The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine halls of the Galactic Council building as Ambassador Elena Rodriguez adjusted her formal diplomatic robes. Today would change everything, though she couldn't have known it at the time. The crystalline structure towered above the capital city of Centauri Prime, its transparent walls reflecting the light of 3 different suns. Inside, representatives from 47 different species had gathered for what many considered the most important treaty signing in galactic history. Elena had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Earth's newest ambassador to the Galactic Council, she carried the hopes of 8 billion humans on her shoulders. Humanity had been knocking on the door of galactic civilization for decades, ever since they developed faster than light travel. But the established alien races had been hesitant to welcome them. Humans had a reputation for being aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerously innovative. The Zephyrians, tall blue-skinned beings with elongated skulls, whispered among themselves as Elena entered the main chamber. Their translator devices hummed softly, converting their musical language into something resembling human speech. The Corvani delegation, resembling upright bears with 6 arms, sat in specially designed chairs that could support their massive frames. Most intimidating of all were the Nexari, ethereal beings of pure energy contained within crystalline shells, whose very presence made the air shimmer with electromagnetic interference. The human delegation may now present their case, announced Chancellor Vexai, the ancient Zephyrian who had led the council for over 2 centuries. His voice carried the weight of eons, and his pale blue eyes seemed to see right through Elena. Elena stood, her heart pounding but her voice steady. Honored members of the Galactic Council, humanity comes before you today not as conquerors or invaders, but as beings seeking our rightful place among the stars. We offer our unique perspective, our innovative spirit, and our unwavering determination to contribute to galactic peace and prosperity. A low rumble came from the Corvani section. Ambassador Grexthor, their chief representative, rose to his impressive 8-foot height. The humans speak of peace, yet their history is written in blood. They have fought wars on their own planet for millennia. How can we trust a species that cannot even maintain peace within their own borders? Elena had expected this challenge. Respected Grexthor, it is precisely because we understand the cost of conflict that we value peace so highly. Our struggles have taught us wisdom. We know the price of division and the value of unity. The Nexari representative, a shimmering form of contained energy called Luxera, spoke in harmonics that made the crystal walls resonate. The concern is not your past, humans, but your potential future. Your species shows remarkable ingenuity in creating weapons of destruction. How can we ensure that this creativity will not threaten galactic stability? This was the crux of the matter, Elena realized. The entire galaxy feared human innovation, particularly in warfare. She had come prepared for this moment, carrying with her the key to humanity's acceptance into galactic society. I understand your concerns completely, Elena replied, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. And I am authorized to offer something unprecedented in diplomatic history. Humanity is willing to sign a binding covenant that will forever limit our military capabilities to match those of the least technologically advanced member species of this council. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant hum of translation devices seemed to pause. Elena continued, we propose the Galactic Non-Proliferation Treaty. Under its terms, humanity agrees to strict limitations on our weapons technology. No energy weapons, no plasma cannons, no quantum disruptors, no molecular disassemblers. We will limit ourselves to the most primitive forms of combat technology. Chancellor Vexai leaned forward, his ancient eyes widening. You would voluntarily handicap your species' military capabilities? We would voluntarily demonstrate our commitment to peace, Elena corrected. The treaty would apply to all member species equally. No one would be permitted to develop or deploy weapons beyond the technological level of projectile launchers and basic chemical explosives. The implications were staggering. Some of the most advanced species in the galaxy would have to abandon their sophisticated weapon systems. The Nexari's energy weapons, the Corvani's gravity manipulators, the Zephyrian's sonic disruptors, all would be forbidden under such a treaty. Ambassador Thelnara of the Verdani, a plant-like species known for their philosophical nature, stood with a rustling of leaves. This is indeed a radical proposition. But, perhaps it has merit. If all species are limited to primitive weapons, then, conflicts would be less devastating. Wars would be smaller in scope, less destructive to innocent populations. Exactly, Elena said, seizing the moment. Imagine a galaxy where disputes are settled without the threat of planetary annihilation. Where the most dangerous weapon is a simple projectile launcher, not a star killer. The Forbade delegation was conferring among themselves, their six-armed gestures creating a complex visual language that no human had ever fully decoded. Finally, Grexthor spoke again. The concept has merit, but what ensures compliance? How do we prevent any species from secretly developing prohibited weapons? Elena pulled out a small device from her diplomatic pouch. We propose the establishment of the Galactic Weapons Monitoring Authority. This quantum scanner can detect any technology above the permitted level from a distance of several light-years. Ships equipped with these scanners would patrol all inhabited systems, ensuring complete compliance. The Nexary representative pulsed brighter, indicating intense thought. The humans have indeed thought this through comprehensively. But, tell us, Ambassador Rodriguez, what exactly do you consider primitive weapons? What would be the technological baseline? Elena smiled. This was the question she had been hoping for. The treaty would permit any weapon that operates on purely mechanical principles. Crossbows, catapults, simple firearms that use chemical propellants, basic explosives. Nothing that requires advanced energy manipulation or exotic matter. A murmur went through the assembled delegates. The idea was so simple, so elegant, that it seemed almost too good to be true. Weapons that could kill individuals, even small groups, but could never threaten entire cities or planets. We would need time to consider this proposal, Chancellor Vexhai announced. The Council will recess for deliberation. As the various delegations filed out of the chamber, Elena felt a mixture of hope and nervousness. She had played humanity's greatest gambit, offering to voluntarily limit their military capabilities in exchange for membership in galactic society. It was a calculated risk based on one simple fact that the aliens didn't fully understand: humans had been using primitive weapons for thousands of years. They had refined and perfected them in ways no other species had ever imagined. Dr. James Chen, Earth's chief military strategist and Elena's closest advisor, approached her as the chamber emptied. A former Special Forces officer turned diplomat, he understood both warfare and politics in ways that made him invaluable to the human delegation. Think they'll go for it? He asked quietly. Elena glanced around to make sure they weren't being overheard. They will. The proposal appeals to their greatest fear, that we'll out-innovate them militarily. By agreeing to limit ourselves, we're actually playing to our greatest strength. The irony is beautiful, James agreed. They want to limit us to primitive weapons, not realizing that we've had 10,000 years to perfect primitive weapons. While they've been developing energy weapons and quantum disruptors, we've been creating compound bows that can punch through Kevlar and crossbows with enough power to take down an elephant. Elena nodded, but her expression remained serious. We're betting the future of our species on the assumption that our mastery of low-tech warfare will give us an advantage in a galaxy that's forgotten how to fight without computers and energy weapons. It's not just about warfare, James pointed out. It's about psychology. Every other species in the galaxy has moved beyond physical combat. They fight with energy and technology. They've forgotten the primal fear of a sharp piece of metal flying at lethal velocity. They've forgotten what it's like to face an enemy who's willing to get close enough to look you in the eye. The implications were staggering when Elena really thought about them. Humanity would be entering a galactic civilization where every other species had been using energy weapons for so long that they'd lost the instincts for physical combat. It would be like bringing a Navy SEAL to a chess tournament, completely different skill sets, but the SEAL's training might prove surprisingly relevant. There's something else, James continued, his voice dropping even lower. I've been studying the military histories of the Council species. None of them have fought a significant ground war in over 1,000 years. Their conflicts are all about ship-to-ship combat and orbital bombardments. They've forgotten about infantry tactics, about urban warfare, about the kind of fighting that humans have been doing right up until we joined the galactic community. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. You're saying we might be bringing a gun to a knife fight? I'm saying we might be bringing a knife to a laser tag game, James corrected. And, sometimes, a knife is exactly what you need. The next 3 days of deliberations were tense. Elena spent her time in meetings with various delegations, answering questions and addressing concerns about the proposed treaty. The Zephyrians worried about enforcement mechanisms. The Corvani questioned the definition of primitive weapons. The Nexari seemed concerned about the philosophical implications of deliberately limiting technological progress. But, gradually, Elena could see the momentum building in favor of the treaty. The proposal addressed the one thing that terrified every established galactic power: the unpredictability of human innovation. By agreeing to limit themselves to primitive weapons, humanity was offering to put a leash on their own creativity. What the aliens didn't realize was that the leash was made of rubber. On the evening before the final vote, Elena stood on the observation deck of her quarters, looking out at the alien stars. 3 moons hung in the purple sky, and ships from dozens of different worlds moved through the orbital traffic patterns like a complex dance. Soon, human ships would be joining that dance, carrying human explorers to worlds beyond imagination. James joined her at the window. Second thoughts? Every day, Elena admitted. But, I keep coming back to the same conclusion. This is our best chance. Maybe our only chance. The treaty will pass, James said with quiet confidence. I've been watching the delegations. They want to believe that they can contain human aggression by limiting our weapons. They don't understand that human aggression isn't really about the weapons we use. Elena knew he was right. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology, it was their adaptability, their willingness to innovate and overcome obstacles. A species that had conquered their own world with nothing but stone tools and determination wasn't going to be stopped by a treaty that let them keep crossbows and explosives. As she watched the alien ships move through the night sky, Elena couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow, humanity would take its first official step into galactic civilization. And they would do it carrying the same weapons that had served them for thousands of years, refined, perfected, and ready to surprise a galaxy that had forgotten how deadly simple things could be. The vote was scheduled for noon the following day. Elena had done everything she could to ensure its passage. Now all she could do was wait and hope that her gamble would pay off. In 12 hours, humanity would either join the galactic community as equals, or they would remain isolated on the fringes of known space, watching other species explore the cosmos without them. Either way, Elena thought as she turned away from the window, the galaxy was about to learn something important about human nature. Something that couldn't be limited by any treaty or contained by any law. When humans wanted something badly enough, they found a way to get it, regardless of the obstacles in their path. The treaty forbade advanced weapons. But it said nothing about advanced warriors. #The treaty forbade advanced weapons. Humanity smiled and brought crossbows 6 months after the Galactic Non-Proliferation Treaty was signed. Captain Marcus Webb stood in the armory of the human exploration vessel Perseverance, running his fingers along the polished wood of a compound crossbow. The weapon was a work of art: carbon fiber limbs, precision-engineered cam wheels, and a scope that could calculate trajectory adjustments for different planetary gravities. It could put a bolt through 6 inches of hardened steel at 300 meters, and it was completely legal under the new treaty. "Beautiful, isn't it?" asked Sergeant Major Patricia Kane, the ship's weapons specialist. A former Marine sniper with 20 years of experience in Earth's various conflicts, she had adapted to the new reality with characteristic efficiency. Precharged pneumatic system, titanium bolts, gyroscopic stabilizers. The Corvani probably think we're carrying museum pieces. Marcus nodded, hefting the crossbow to test its balance. Any word from the other ships in the fleet? The Darwin reports successful completion of their diplomatic mission to the Helix sector. The Magellan is setting up our first trade routes with the Verdani Collective. And the Constitution just finished surveying the disputed territories near the neutral zone. Patricia paused, checking her tactical display. No hostile contacts so far, but that's about to change. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Explain. Patricia pulled up a holographic star map, highlighting a red zone near the edge of human-explored space. Intelligence reports suggest that the Skarn Confederacy is testing the boundaries of the new treaty. They've been making aggressive moves towards several council member systems, probably trying to see how serious everyone is about this primitive weapons limitation. The Skarn were a relatively new species in the galactic community, having joined only 50 years ago. Reptilian, aggressive, and militaristic, they had been among the most vocal opponents of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They saw it as a weakness, a voluntary handicapping that went against every principle of evolution and survival. What kind of testing? Marcus asked. Border violations, aggressive patrols, harassment of civilian shipping. Nothing that technically violates the treaty, but enough to make everyone nervous. The council is meeting in emergency session next week to discuss the situation. Marcus studied the star map, his mind already working through tactical scenarios. The Skarn controlled a cluster of resource-rich systems that bordered both human space and several council member territories. If they decided to test the new galactic order with military action, humanity would likely be the first to respond. Have you seen their military assessments? He asked. Patricia nodded grimly. The Skarn have been using energy weapons for over 2 centuries. Plasma rifles, particle beam cannons, the works. Under the new treaty, they've had to downgrade to projectile weapons and basic explosives. Their military leadership is reportedly furious about it. And they probably assume we're just as unhappy, Marcus realized. They think we're all equally handicapped by the weapons restrictions. Exactly. What they don't realize is that humans never stopped using projectile weapons. While every other species was developing energy weapons, we were perfecting gunpowder, improving metallurgy, and creating weapons that could kill just as effectively as any plasma rifle. Marcus walked over to another section of the armory, where rows of what appeared to be ancient Earth weapons hung in perfect order. Longbows made from laminated composites that could pierce modern body armor. Crossbows with draw weights that would challenge a hydraulic press. Firearms that looked primitive but could deliver precision shots at distances that would impress any sniper. The Skarn use energy weapons because they're efficient and deadly, Patricia continued. But they've forgotten something important about warfare. It's not just about the weapon, it's about the warrior using it. She picked up a recurved bow that looked like something from ancient Earth, but Marcus could see the subtle modifications: carbon fiber reinforcements, precision-balanced arrows with depleted uranium tips, a sight system that could calculate wind resistance and target movement in real time. This bow can put an arrow through a Skarn warrior's body armor at 200 meters, Patricia said casually. And it's completely silent. No energy signature, no electromagnetic pulse, no warning at all until the arrow hits its target. Marcus felt a familiar excitement building in his chest, the same feeling he'd experienced during his early days in the military, when he'd realized that human ingenuity could overcome any obstacle. Show me the rest. For the next hour, Patricia walked him through humanity's answer to the galactic weapons restrictions. Compound bows that could punch through spacecraft hulls. Crossbows with explosive-tipped bolts designed for zero-gravity combat. Chemical explosives that could level buildings or disable starships. Firearms that used advanced propellants to achieve velocities that rivaled energy weapons. But it wasn't just the weapons themselves that impressed Marcus, it was the thinking behind them. Every piece of equipment had been designed by people who understood both the letter and spirit of the treaty, and had found ways to maximize lethality within those constraints. The other species think in terms of energy efficiency and technological sophistication, Patricia explained as she demonstrated a weapon that looked like a simple grenade launcher but could deliver guided munitions with pinpoint accuracy. Humans think in terms of getting the job done. We don't care if our weapons look primitive as long as they can kill the enemy. What about armor and defense systems? Marcus asked. Patricia grinned and led him to another section of the armory. The treaty restricts weapons, but it doesn't say anything about protection. We've developed personal armor that can stop most energy weapons and all projectile weapons. Powered exoskeletons that enhance human strength and speed. stealth systems that work by disrupting electromagnetic sensors rather than bending light. Marcus examined a suit of armor that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. The material felt lighter than cloth but harder than steel. Composite ceramics, ablative layers, and kinetic dampeners, Patricia explained. A human soldier wearing this armor could walk through a plasma barrage and still have enough energy to put a crossbow bolt through his attacker's heart. The implications were staggering. While other species had been forced to abandon their advanced weapons and defensive systems, humans had simply adapted their primitive weapons to modern standards and kept their defenses at the cutting edge of technology. There's something else, Patricia said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. Dr. Chen has been working with Earth Command on tactical doctrine. We've been developing combat strategies specifically designed for fighting opponents who are used to energy weapons. She pulled up a tactical simulation on her display screen. Most alien species fight at long range using energy weapons. They're used to point-and-click warfare where the fastest processor wins. But human combat doctrine emphasizes mobility, stealth, and close-quarters fighting. The simulation showed human soldiers moving through an urban environment, using cover and concealment to get close to enemy positions before striking with precision weapons. It was a style of warfare that hadn't been seen in the galaxy for centuries. We call it analog warfare, Patricia continued. No computers, no sensors, no electromagnetic signatures. Just human warriors using enhanced versions of weapons that our ancestors carried into battle thousands of years ago. Marcus watched the simulation with growing amazement. The human soldiers moved like ghosts through the battlefield, appearing suddenly, to eliminate targets before vanishing again into the shadows. Their alien opponents, accustomed to fighting with energy weapons at long range, seemed unable to adapt to the close-quarters combat style. How effective is it? We've run exercises against simulated Skarn forces using their new primitive weapons loadout, Patricia replied. Human forces achieved victory ratios of 10-1 in most scenarios. The aliens are skilled fighters, but they're fighting a completely different kind of war than the one we're prepared for. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Marcus activated the ship's communication system, and the image of Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the main screen. Dr. James Chen's sister, she had been promoted to lead humanity's new galactic fleet after demonstrating remarkable strategic insight during the treaty negotiations. Captain Webb, we've received new intelligence about the Skarn situation. I'm sending you updated mission parameters, but the summary is this: the Skarn Confederacy has issued an ultimatum to the Galactic Council. They're demanding revision of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and threatening military action if their demands are not met. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. What kind of military action? They're massing forces near the border of human space. Intelligence suggests they're planning to test their primitive weapons against ours, believing that all species are equally handicapped by the treaty restrictions. Admiral Chen paused, and Marcus could see the steel in her eyes, the same determination that had made her brother such an effective negotiator. The Council has requested that humanity provide a demonstration of our defensive capabilities. We're to intercept any Skarn forces that violate Council space and show them exactly what our primitive weapons can do. Understood, Admiral. What are our rules of engagement? The treaty permits defensive actions using approved weapons systems. You are authorized to use any weapon that complies with the Non-Proliferation Treaty to defend Council space and human interests. Show them what humanity learned during 10,000 years of primitive warfare. The communication ended, leaving Marcus alone with Patricia and the weight of what was coming. The Skarn Confederacy was about to test the new galactic order, and humanity would be the ones to teach them why that was a mistake. How long until the Skarn forces reach our position? Marcus asked. Patricia checked her instruments. Based on current trajectory and speed, approximately 18 hours. They're coming in force, at least 12 ships, probably carrying several thousand warriors. Marcus looked around the armory one more time, taking in the weapons that would soon be put to their ultimate test. Crossbows and longbows, firearms and explosives, the tools of primitive warfare refined to lethal perfection. Alert the crew, he said finally. Battle stations in 12 hours. And, Patricia? Yes, sir? Make sure every weapon is ready. We're about to show the galaxy why humans spent so much time perfecting primitive warfare. He paused, thinking about the irony of the situation. The Skarn think they understand what primitive weapons can do. They're about to learn that there's nothing primitive about the way humans wage war. As Patricia moved to carry out his orders, Marcus remained in the armory, surrounded by weapons that looked ancient but performed like instruments of precision death. Tomorrow, humanity would face its first test as a member of the galactic community. The treaty forbade advanced weapons, but it had nothing to say about advanced tactics, superior training, or the kind of ruthless innovation that had made humans the apex predators of their own world. The Skarn were about to discover why that distinction mattered. The treaty forbade advanced weapons. Humanity smiled and, brought Crossbows Commander Thekvar of the Skarn Confederacy stood on the bridge of his flagship Bloodfawn, watching the tactical display with growing satisfaction. 12 Skarn vessels moved in perfect formation through the void, each one carrying elite warriors armed with the most advanced primitive weapons their engineers could devise. Plasma-forged steel blades, high-velocity projectile launchers, explosive devices that could breach starship hulls, everything permitted under the ridiculous treaty the soft council species had forced upon the galaxy. Target vessel identified, Commander, reported his tactical officer, a scarred veteran named Grexstar. Single human exploration ship, designation Perseverance. Long-range sensors indicate minimal defensive capabilities. Thekvar bared his fangs in what passed for a Skarn smile. The humans were about to learn a hard lesson about challenging a warrior species. The Skarn had been fighting wars when most galactic species were still discovering fire. A few decades of using energy weapons hadn't made them forget the fundamentals of combat. Signal the human vessel, Thekvar ordered. Demand their immediate surrender and withdrawal from this sector. The communication channel crackled to life, revealing the image of a human male in a dark blue uniform. Captain Marcus Webb looked calm, almost relaxed, as he spoke. Commander Thekvar, I presume? This is Captain Webb of the Earth vessel Perseverance. You are in violation of Council space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Thekvar's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. Consequences? From a single human ship? Captain, you are outnumbered 12-1, and your species has been using primitive weapons for less than a year. We have been perfecting warfare for millennia. Actually, Captain Webb replied with what seemed like genuine amusement, we've been using primitive weapons for about 10,000 years. We just got really good at it. Before Thekvar could respond, the human ship began moving. What happened next defied everything the Skarn commander thought he knew about space combat. The Perseverance didn't retreat or attempt evasive maneuvers. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the Skarn formation, its course seemingly suicidal. At the same time, dozens of small objects ejected from the human vessel, objects too small to be escape pods but too numerous to be standard missiles. Analysis. Thekvar barked. Unknown projectiles, Commander. No energy signatures, no guidance systems detected. They appear to be inert metal objects? Thekvar frowned. What kind of warfare was this? The objects were moving too fast to be debris, but they showed none of the characteristics of proper weapons. No energy cores, no propulsion systems, no targeting computers. Evasive action, he ordered, but it was too late. The first projectile struck the Bloodfawn's forward shields, and passed right through them. The shields were designed to deflect energy weapons and guided missiles, not simple kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The impact sent shudders through the massive vessel as the projectile, revealed to be a tungsten cord penetrator round, punched through 3 decks before exploding in the ship's secondary power core. Shields down, reported the tactical officer, his voice rising in panic. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 9. All around the formation, other Skarn vessels were experiencing similar impacts. The human projectiles were devastatingly simple, dense metal cores accelerated to incredible velocities using chemical propellants. They carried no electronics to jam, no energy signatures to track, and no guidance systems to confuse. They were just chunks of metal moving very, very fast. Return fire! Thekvar roared. All weapons! The Skarn ships unleashed their primitive weapons arsenal, high-velocity cannons, explosive projectiles, and chemical warheads. But their targets seemed to have vanished. Where the single human ship had been moments before, there were now dozens of smaller vessels, each one moving with impossible agility through the battle space. Where did they come from? Grexstar demanded. Stealth deployment, came the response from the sensor station. The human vessel deployed multiple smaller craft using passive systems. No energy signatures until they began maneuvering. What the Skarn were witnessing was a perfect demonstration of human asymmetric warfare. The Perseverance had deployed a swarm of small, stealthy fighters, each one equipped with primitive weapons that had been refined to deadly perfection. The fighters moved like dancers through the void, using cold gas thrusters and gravitational slingshots to avoid the Skarn weapons fire. One of the human fighters swept past the Blood Fawn's bridge, close enough for Thekvar to see the pilot through the transparent canopy. The human warrior wore a sleek helmet and what appeared to be ancient Earth military insignia. In her hands, she carried what looked like an impossibly large crossbow. That's not possible, Grexstar breathed. No one fights in vacuum with hand weapons. The human pilot proved him wrong by firing her crossbow directly at the bridge. The bolt struck the reinforced transparent aluminum with tremendous force, spider-webbing the entire forward viewport. But this was no ordinary crossbow bolt. As it impacted, chemical charges in the tip detonated, spraying acid across the bridge windows and sending toxic fumes into the environmental systems. Chemical attack, someone screamed. Seal the bridge! But the humans weren't finished. As emergency systems engaged, more fighters swept past the damaged Skarn flagship, each one delivering precisely targeted attacks. Crossbow bolts carrying electromagnetic pulse charges disabled sensor arrays. Arrow-like projectiles with molecular acid tips ate through armor plating. Explosive charges delivered by what appeared to be oversized slingshots breached weapons systems and life support. This is impossible, Thekvar muttered, watching his formation fall apart under assault by weapons that belonged in a museum. They're using bows and arrows in space combat. His tactical officer was frantically trying to coordinate a defense, but the Skarn weapons seemed inadequate against the human tactics. Their projectile launchers were designed for long-range bombardment, not close-quarters combat against highly maneuverable targets. Their explosive devices required target locks and guidance systems that couldn't track the human fighters' erratic movement patterns. Meanwhile, the humans fought like they had been born in vacuum. Their weapons were designed for precisely this kind of combat, close-range, high-impact engagements where superior mobility and unconventional tactics could overcome numerical superiority. Commander, Grexstar reported, his voice tight with disbelief, we're reading massive damage across the fleet. The humans are systematically disabling our weapons and life support systems using primitive projectile weapons. Another human fighter streaked past, and this time Thekvar could see the weapon clearly. It was indeed a crossbow, but one unlike anything in the galactic databases. The frame was made from some kind of advanced composite material, and the string seemed to be under tremendous tension. When it fired, the bolt moved at velocities that defied belief for such a simple weapon. Analysis of human projectiles, he demanded. The crossbow bolts appear to be made from depleted uranium cores with tungsten penetrators. The arrows use similar materials but with different payload configurations. Some carry explosive charges, others electromagnetic pulse devices, still others chemical agents. Thekvar stared at the tactical display in growing horror. His 12 ships were being systematically destroyed by a few dozen humans using weapons that predated galactic civilization. It wasn't just the weapons themselves, it was how they were being used. The humans fought with a ferocity and innovation that the galaxy had forgotten. They used their fighters like missiles, coming in close enough to deliver hand weapons fire before disappearing into the void. They employed chemical weapons, biological agents, and electromagnetic warfare, all using delivery systems that looked like they belonged in ancient Earth museums. Casualty report, Thekvar ordered through gritted teeth. 7 ships reporting major damage, 3 completely disabled. Estimated warrior losses at 40% and rising. The humans are targeting life support systems specifically. That was when Thekvar realized the true horror of what was happening. The humans weren't just winning, they were doing it while following the letter of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Every weapon they used was technically primitive, operating on mechanical rather than energy principles. But they had refined these primitive weapons to a level of lethality that surpassed most energy weapons. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." Captain Webb's image appeared on the main screen again, but now his expression was harder, more dangerous. Behind him, Thekvar could see humans in battle armor moving with quiet efficiency, preparing weapons that looked both ancient and terrifyingly modern. "Commander Thekvar," Captain Webb said calmly, "you have violated Council space and threatened peaceful vessels. Under the terms of the Galactic Non-Proliferation Treaty, we are authorized to use any approved weapons system to defend against your aggression. You're using primitive weapons." Thekvar protested. "This isn't warfare, it's butchery." "Actually," Webb replied, "this is exactly what primitive warfare looks like when it's practiced by experts. You see, Commander, while your species was developing energy weapons, humanity spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing with simple tools. We never forgot the fundamentals." On the tactical display, more human fighters were deploying from what seemed like empty space, concealed launch points throughout the battle area, positioned in advance of the engagement. "The difference between your primitive weapons and ours," Webb continued, "is that yours are energy weapons without the energy. You took sophisticated systems and made them simple. We took simple systems and made them sophisticated." To demonstrate his point, one of the human fighters fired what appeared to be a simple arrow at a Skarn vessel. But this arrow carried a payload that Thekvar had never seen before, a chemical agent that began eating through the ship's armor, creating systematic hull breaches that followed the vessel's structural weak points with impossible precision. "How?" Grexstar whispered. "Molecular-level engineering," Webb's voice came through the communication system. "We've had centuries to study starship construction and metallurgy. Our arrows are designed to exploit the specific vulnerabilities of every known ship design. Your armor is strong against energy weapons, but it was never intended to resist chemical agents delivered by kinetic penetrators." Thekvar felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the implications. The humans hadn't just adapted primitive weapons for space combat, they had weaponized their entire scientific knowledge base while staying within the treaty restrictions. "Surrender," Webb said simply. "Your ships are disabled, your warriors are neutralized, and your mission has failed. We can continue this demonstration if you prefer, but I think you've learned what you came here to learn." Looking at his tactical display, Thekvar could see that his proud fleet was indeed defeated. 12 of the finest Skarn warships, crewed by veteran warriors and armed with the best primitive weapons their engineers could devise, had been systematically dismantled by a small force of humans using weapons that looked like antiques. "We surrender," he said quietly. "Wise choice," Webb replied. "You'll be escorted to the nearest council station, where you can report to your superiors about what you've learned today. I suggest you tell them that the Non-Proliferation Treaty is working exactly as intended." As the surviving Skarn ships were taken into custody by arriving council vessels, Thekvar finally understood what had happened. The galaxy had been terrified of human innovation in warfare, so they had agreed to restrict everyone to primitive weapons. But they had forgotten that innovation wasn't just about technology, it was about finding new ways to use existing tools. The humans had spent millennia turning simple weapons into instruments of precise death. While other species had abandoned primitive warfare for energy weapons, humans had perfected it to levels that the galaxy couldn't comprehend. The treaty forbade advanced weapons, but it couldn't forbid advanced thinking. And that, Thekvar realized as he watched human fighters collect their disabled vessels, made all the difference in the universe. #The treaty forbade advanced weapons. Humanity smiled and brought Crossbows 2 years after the Skarn incident. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood once again in the Great Chamber of the Galactic Council, but the atmosphere was dramatically different from her first visit. The crystalline walls now displayed holographic images of human vessels patrolling the Outer Rim territories, their primitive weapon systems clearly visible to any observer. What had once been humanity's desperate gambit for acceptance had become the foundation of galactic security. Chancellor Vexhi's ancient features showed a mixture of admiration and wariness as he addressed the assembled delegates. The quarterly security report indicates that piracy in the outer systems has decreased by 97% since human patrol forces began operations. Conflicts between member species have virtually ceased, and several aggressive non-member civilizations have requested immediate inclusion in the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Elena suppressed a smile. The galaxy had learned what she had known from the beginning, that restricting humanity to primitive weapons hadn't weakened them, it had simply forced them to become more creative. In the 2 years since the treaty's implementation, human engineers had developed crossbows that could punch through starship hulls, arrows that could deliver payloads with surgical precision, and chemical explosives that made plasma weapons look crude by comparison. Ambassador Thelnara of the Verdani rose from her seat, her leaf-like appendages rustling with nervous energy. While we appreciate the effectiveness of human security forces, some concerns have been raised about the intensity of their methods. Elena raised an eyebrow. Could you be more specific, Ambassador? The incident at Kepler Station last month, Thelnara replied carefully. When the Raider Coalition attempted to seize control of the mining facility, the human response team eliminated the entire pirate force using weapons that appeared to be simple hunting bows. The raiders were heavily armed and had taken hostages, Elena pointed out. The situation required precision intervention. Yes, but... Thelnara seemed to struggle for words. The human warriors killed 37 pirates with 37 arrows, many fired from distances exceeding 2 kilometers, in a zero-gravity environment with multiple obstacles. This level of accuracy seems impossible for primitive weapons. Dr. James Chen, now serving as humanity's military liaison to the Council, stepped forward. Ambassador Thelnara raises an interesting point about the definition of primitive weapons. Our longbows use advanced materials and precision engineering, but they operate on the same mechanical principles that humans have used for thousands of years. The skill of the archer is what makes the difference. The Nexari representative, Luxera, pulsed brighter as she spoke. The concern is not about the weapons themselves, but about the warriors using them. Human soldiers appear to possess capabilities that exceed normal biological parameters. Elena had been expecting this question. In the months following the Skarn incident, human military forces had gained a reputation throughout the galaxy that bordered on mythical. Stories circulated of human warriors who could shoot crossbow bolts around corners, soldiers who could track enemies through vacuum using only their enhanced senses, and commandos who could infiltrate alien bases carrying nothing but knives and emerge victorious. The treaty restricts weapons technology, Elena said carefully. It places no limitations on training, tactics, or biological enhancement within established safety parameters. Biological enhancement? Chancellor Vexhi leaned forward, his pale eyes narrowing. Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing human soldiers in action. Genetic therapy, surgical enhancement, cybernetic implants, all technologies that were already approved for medical use. We've simply applied them to military applications. Enhanced reflexes, improved vision, increased muscle density, better coordination. Nothing that violates the spirit of the treaty. What he didn't mention was that these enhancements had been designed specifically to work with primitive weapons. Human soldiers could now track multiple targets simultaneously while calculating trajectory adjustments for crossbow fire in three-dimensional combat environments. Their enhanced muscles could draw bowstrings that would challenge industrial equipment. Their modified nervous systems could process tactical information faster than most alien computers. Ambassador Grexthor of the Corvani stood to his full imposing height, his 6 arms gesturing in complex patterns. The Skarn Confederacy has requested a formal review of human military capabilities. They claim that your soldiers are using technology that exceeds the treaty parameters. Elena felt a familiar satisfaction. The Skarn had been testing the boundaries of the treaty for months, trying to find ways to regain their military advantage. Each attempt had ended in humiliating defeat at the hands of human forces using weapons that looked like museum pieces but performed like instruments of precision death. The Skarn are welcome to observe our training facilities, she replied smoothly. In fact, we've established an exchange program for military observers. Any council species can send representatives to study our methods. What she didn't mention was that every alien observer came away from the human training facilities with a deep and lasting respect for human military capabilities. Watching humans practice with their primitive weapons was like watching artists create masterpieces, every movement precise, every shot calculated, every tactic refined through centuries of warfare. The Zephyrian delegate, Kekstani, spoke in musical tones that the translation devices rendered as concern. The psychological impact of human military operations has been significant. The Crimson Brotherhood pirates abandoned 3 star systems last month after a single human patrol ship entered their territory. Elena nodded. The Dauntless is equipped with standard treaty-compliant weapons. Captain Rodriguez and her crew simply made it clear that piracy would not be tolerated in that sector. What had actually happened was far more dramatic. The Dauntless, carrying a crew of 30 enhanced human warriors, had systematically hunted down and eliminated over 200 pirates using nothing but crossbows, compound bows, and chemical explosives. The engagement had lasted 6 hours and had ended with the complete destruction of the pirate fleet. The surviving pirates spread word throughout the criminal underworld that humans were not to be trifled with. The effectiveness of your forces is undeniable, Chancellor Vexhai admitted. But some member species are concerned about the long-term implications. If humans continue to dominate military operations, it could create an imbalance in galactic power structures. Elena had been preparing for this moment for months. Which is why we're proposing the establishment of the Galactic Defense Initiative. A joint training program where human instructors would teach other species how to maximize the effectiveness of primitive weapons. The chamber fell silent. The idea was both generous and terrifying, humans offering to share the secrets of their military success with the rest of the galaxy. You would teach other species your methods? Luxera asked, her crystalline form flickering with uncertainty. Within reason, Dr. Chen replied. Basic marksmanship, tactical principles, equipment modification techniques. We're not talking about sharing classified technologies, just fundamental skills that any species can develop with proper training. Elena could see the wheels turning in the aliens' minds. The offer was tempting, the chance to learn from the most effective military force in the galaxy. But it also raised uncomfortable questions about what humanity might gain from such an arrangement. Ambassador Thalnara was the first to speak. What would humanity require in exchange for this training? Continued cooperation in maintaining galactic peace, Elena replied simply. And access to the scientific and cultural knowledge of member species. Humans are naturally curious. We want to learn about the universe around us. It was a masterful diplomatic move. Humanity was offering to share their military advantages in exchange for exactly what they had always wanted, full integration into galactic civilization. The other species could either accept the offer and gain access to human military expertise, or decline and risk falling further behind in military capability. There is another matter, Chancellor Vexhai said carefully. Intelligence reports suggest that the Void Hunters are massing forces beyond the galactic rim. They appear to be immune to the electromagnetic effects that disabled their ships during previous encounters. Elena felt her blood chill. The Void Hunters were an ancient machine intelligence that had periodically threatened galactic civilization for millennia. Their ships were constructed from exotic matter that made them nearly invulnerable to energy weapons. Previous encounters had been resolved only through the use of electromagnetic pulse weapons that disrupted their control systems. Are EMP weapons still effective against them? She asked. Unknown, the Chancellor replied. But, if they are not, the galaxy may face its greatest threat in recorded history. Energy weapons are useless against their hull materials, and most primitive weapons lack the power to damage their vessels. Dr. Chen and Elena exchanged glances. This was exactly the kind of challenge that humanity had been preparing for since joining the galactic community. We may have a solution, Elena said slowly. But it would require council approval for the deployment of some specialized equipment. Explain. Elena activated her own holographic display, showing technical specifications for weapons that looked primitive but incorporated principles that no other species had considered. Kinetic penetrators using exotic matter cores, Dr. Chen explained. Crossbow bolts and arrows designed specifically to counter Void Hunter technology. Chemical explosives that can disrupt exotic matter at the molecular level. And delivery systems that use gravitational manipulation to achieve unprecedented velocities. The weapons look like something from ancient Earth, but the physics involved were at the cutting edge of galactic science. Elena watched the faces of the assembled delegates as they realized what they were seeing. "You've been preparing for this possibility," Chancellor Vexhai observed. "Humans always prepare for worst-case scenarios," Elena replied. "It's what keeps us alive." The vote was unanimous. When the Void Hunters finally arrived 6 months later, they faced a galaxy defended by warriors carrying weapons that their ancient databases couldn't classify or counter. Crossbows that fired projectiles through dimensional space. Arrows that carried exotic matter warheads. Chemical explosives that could dissolve the quantum bonds holding their ships together. The final battle lasted 3 days and ended with the complete destruction of the Void Hunter fleet. The victory was achieved by a combined force of species working together, but everyone knew that it had been human innovation and human warriors that turned the tide. Standing on the observation deck of her flagship after the battle, Elena watched human and alien ships working together to clear the debris field. The galaxy had changed dramatically since that first desperate treaty negotiation. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by abandoning their nature, but by embracing it completely. The treaty forbade advanced weapons, but it had never imagined what advanced warriors could do with primitive tools. Humanity had taken the galaxy's attempt to limit their military power and turned it into the foundation of their galactic leadership. As Elena watched a young human pilot demonstrate crossbow techniques to a fascinated group of alien observers, she realized that the real victory wasn't just military. The treaty had forced humanity to become teachers, sharing their hard-won knowledge with species across the galaxy. In trying to contain human aggression, the galaxy had instead unleashed human innovation on an unprecedented scale. The universe was a vast and dangerous place, filled with threats that could challenge any civilization. But, as long as there were humans willing to face those threats with primitive weapons and advanced thinking, the galaxy would remain free. The treaty forbade advanced weapons. But it said nothing about advanced warriors, advanced tactics, or the advanced civilization that emerged when humanity finally found its place among the stars. And, in the end, that made all the difference.